to Creating with Creators. I'm here with Jared Sher, and we're going to be talking a lot about lighting photography today. So, Jared, you use a lot of strobes and a lot of constant lights. So, if you could just generalize it, like, what is lighting in photography?
Lighting in photography, a lot of it's funny. A lot of people show up with cameras, and that's cool. I find it's so funny because it switches all the time between continuous and flash. I find that flash really gives you extra quality versus just continuous lights in general, just because of the settings you could put in your camera and whatnot. And to me, it's interesting because people talk about like high megapixels and stuff, but you're not even getting them without that quality of the light.
Right. Like,
and I find that to be really interesting, honestly.
And like, it's one of those things where like I was trying to look into it one time because I had just gotten like a new light, so I had a powerful strobe and a powerful constant light. So before shoot, I was like, what's better to use, daylight, constant light, or the strobe? What the strobe is better, like if you're taking individual photos, it can match the exact power that you need that the constant light can't.
Yeah, so now you're working like if you have one light that has X amount of power and then you have another light that has another amount of power, it's like you really have to work around the one that has less power.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, so one of the new things I'm doing now is I'm trying to incorporate using both continuous light and flash, but I have to work around what has less power. And that is like, that's a little the challenge. One thing I noticed too is if you're going to use both, I don't know, like, so continuous light won't have the right look on the face, in the eyes actually, the eyeballs. The I don't know if it's the pupil or the iris, it's just not the right like look, and you don't get the same kind of catch light, I find. So I find that I try to use continuous lights now actually as props even, because backlighting to me is what gives magic to the shot.
Right.
So now it's like you're adding magic to the shot by having lights coming from behind, but it's also like lighting design in a way. And then so I like that, but you're limited to that.
Right.
So now you have to use a strobe. The downside is you can't be shooting at say f7, f8 because the lights won't handle that. So it's kind of like a video look.
So Jared, how'd you get into studio lighting to begin with?
So I got into lighting because it's kind of the thing that interested me the most out of just photography in general. I started off many years ago actually like as an artist, so I would draw a lot and paint a lot. So I'd go to like art museums and study like classical paintings. And when I saw that it's like Rembrandt lighting is the name of a lighting, I'm like, I would go to the museum and study Rembrandt way before I was even into photography. So I'm like, I already know what that look is. And like, so that kind of got me into lighting, I feel like. So then the first thing I did was I kind of looked up like diagrams, like what makes good lighting, like what even is good lighting. And then I learned that different patterns from the shadows are really what's creating the different looks.
I think what's funny about like the old school painters is that like they kind of knew that before they went to paint. When I feel like as photographers, like we take it like from one angle, like okay, that looks good, but let's move it to a different angle. But they were like, no, I'm going to paint it as if it was coming down from one angle.
Yes, yeah. It's the old school painting is funny too because we think, I mean, not as much with lighting, but as far as even just like drafting on the canvas, they actually projected back in the day, like a long time ago, and people don't know that. So when you go to the museum, you're like, how did they ever like draw so accurately to paint this thing? It's like they actually had techniques back then. I believe it's called camera obscura, where they projected. But as far as the lighting goes, so I looked up different diagrams, and I'm like, oh, like if the light's hitting and there's a shadow under the nose, it's butterfly lighting. Or if it's like, oh, that's Rembrandt lighting. And like, I don't know, I found that to be kind of how I got into it, so I got really specific.
So where do you see yourself actually going with this?
I find I have such a busy schedule, and so it's hard to like edit all the time, honestly. That's like one of the biggest flaws to photography and video. People don't understand that part. I feel like, so because of that, I love lighting, so it's kind of like I noticed being on different sets, like, wait, I just have to work really hard, set up all the gear, and then end of the day, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
completely done. I don't have to, deliver anything after that point. So
it's just like add a camera that pretty much already spot on because all the lighting's set up correctly.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday I was at a shoot and like we had all the production and like it took them just as long as it took me to do the lighting.
Yeah.
And at the end, the same thing. But you're doing both. It's kind of impossible to give like a full, like not quality, but you know what I mean? Like how would you have done both?
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? There's like 3 guys. There's me, 2 other camera guys, and they also had input too. So, yeah.
So speaking of like, since it's so complicated, say someone wanted to really just kind of get their first start and like get into getting better with lighting. Where do you like suggest them starting if they're trying to practice using different kinds of lights for their own work?
You can only really start with one, or else you have big pockets.
Yeah.
So start with one, like one is all like those old school painters could do. Really study, the patterns. Like if you don't know about them, look it up. Like look up and see what short lighting is and half lighting and Rembrandt lighting and all these Paramount and all these different styles, because that's really what's going to give the different look. The thing about lighting that I love is it's not just lighting, it's the feel. Like, it literally will give a different feel. Like, that's what photography is.
Yeah.
If you want them to feel something. And the other big thing about art that I found, it's all about contrast. So it's kind of like, lights, darks. And then in painting, it's also like warms and cools if you look at the painting. So, yeah. So you always, whenever you have one color, put another color.
So I think like what we could recommend is that instead of like being like, okay, what few $100s I have to spend on lighting, you could literally buy some LED light bulbs or some strip lights for like less than, you could get 3 for like $50, and then your ISO is going to be cranked up, and like you could kind of play
you can
with
at
it that
least
way.
learn the patterns.
Yes,
with something cheap you can. The one thing that a lot of people don't know about is CRI, which is color rendering index, and that's kind of like the quality of the physical light. That is going up, and but honestly, Home Depot, they sell a brand called Cree, I want to say, and it's like probably under $10 for one bulb, and the CRIs were around 90. It's may even be a little bit more actually, and there you go, $10 bulb, and it's just lighting is also after CRI. The only thing is really it's just how you modify the light, and that's another huge thing.
So speaking of that, like, what are the biggest challenges with lighting that you've come across that you kind of want to talk about?
Again, it's just controlling. I feel like outdoors is honestly kind of hard because you're actually controlling the sun.
Yeah.
I think that can be a challenge. And then you need lights that can even overpower the sun, which is a cool concept.
Yeah.
Another cool thing, you can even do is fake, like, people always want, like, the sunset look, with the sun coming right through the back.
Yeah.
You could put a speed light. That could be a speed light, and you gel it with like a CTO, like a orange gel, and you would think it's the sun.
Yeah, the sun out horizon, you have no idea.
Yeah. So that's things about lighting that I like. You can make things look like it's nighttime, daytime.
Regardless of, like, you can make night shots in the middle of the day, and you can make day shots in the middle of the night, depending on what your light looks like.
Yeah, and I've had situations like that. Like, I was helping out like a small indie film set, and they're like, yeah, we need to make this look like night. And I'm like, all right, well, let's make it look like night. And then, like, the director of photography is like, well, the light has to make sense, too. It can't just be lit to look nice.
Yeah.
So, like, where's this light coming from? And, like, all right, if that's going to be coming through the light, like, it should, like, if it's night, it's got to have, like, moonlight. So we want it to be a little, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think it's cool how specific all this can be.
Right. Like, I was shooting yesterday, and I was, like, trying to shoot some B-roll of me, like, in a forest. And you're speaking about the sun. The sun can be difficult. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yes.
Especially on a cloudy day where, like, you're shooting, so you get shots when the sun's, like, out, and then it's like you try to continue that, and the sun goes behind a cloud, and you're like, well, now I have to wait for the sun to come back out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a challenge. Another big thing people don't even know about, like, and like if you're a model, like, you wouldn't know what's going on. For us, like, you might not even be able to focus the camera. Like, it's hard to focus when all that light's coming in, Yeah, I find that to be like, it's frustrating sometimes if a model doesn't get what we're going through because they've never picked up a camera. Everyone everyone can be a photographer now. We all have phones and our, like cameras on our phone. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you're not a photographer until you have manual mode, dude.
Right.
Like,
that's when
no one is a photographer until you have manual.
Exactly. Like, people are getting towards like that part where like, oh like you can do the different like aperture settings on like iPhones.
Yeah.
And, they're like, I'm a photographer. I'm like, no, you're not. Like,
yes.
And some people go like, don't you want like the newest like iPhone because you're a photographer? I'm like, not really. Like,
yeah, I have zero interest.
Like, my phone, as long as it can, like, receive text, call, and, like, navigate, like, that's good. That's all I need.
Yeah. Yeah, and people don't understand that, like, each camera is made for something different, too. So, like, I kind of see why it's, like, hire this photographer. He's a sports photographer. So he does versus portrait guy for portraits. But you can go out and buy all of them separate, too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there really is a specific use for each camera, and I don't know, that's kind of interesting too.
Yeah. So what kind of keeps you going in this field?
I got to a point now where it's like I'm not even really posting a lot, but I'm getting inquiries and people are wanting me, so it's kind of now I'm like in it, you know what I mean? But the fact that there's always something new to learn, you're always getting better, like it always shocks me. I'm like I'll feel real good about everything, and I'll be like, what the hell? Like, there's so much more to learn still. And then it's just like, just constantly figuring new things out is kind of what keeps me going. I find like the art of it,
So let's say, is there someone out there like in this field that like you would kill to work with? Like, who's your dream person to either shoot or go on a shoot with?
It's kind of funny because I'm not sure. I just kind of did it. I shot with Yuri Foreman. He's a world champion boxer, so I think that's cool. Because I used to watch him on TV, and so now I'm going to be going to Brooklyn this weekend, and I'm going to shoot him again for promotional work, and then we're going to be going to Kentucky for another fight. So it's cool to hang out with people that are doing stuff, I guess more musicians would be the next thing.
Yeah. So do you have like a dream musician?
And that's honestly being brewed as of kind of yesterday. It was like kind of asked to me like, hey, would you be willing to go on this like on this journey with these national multi-platinum like ultra famous musicians. I can't name names, but but the thing is, you gotta be quiet. You can't, you're gonna be with them, but you're not really them, but you are, but you're not, so.
You gotta slowly work your way
and that's like a huge, ultra famous person right there. So, that would be like the next thing, I think. If I could work with the next person, it would probably be what I'm probably about to be doing, honestly.
Right. So before...
And that's kind of what keeps me going.
Okay, cool.
I'm actually getting results,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Jared, you've mentioned that you've worked a lot with boxers and you've done a lot of boxing kind of photography, but before photography, you did something related to boxing, right?
Yeah, I actually owned a boxing gym for 10 years. That's kind of how... Honestly, that is really what helped me do so much of what I have. A lot of it is even from just having huge space, too. But, so I was always just having access to it. And...
So, like, as an owner of a boxing gym, were you helping train them, or did you just own the facility?
I trained them.
Okay.
Yeah, and owned it. I had, like, probably 70 employees under me at one point. And, so I honestly, here's a weird thing. Okay. Like a lot of people are like, what makes a good photographer is like people skills. Like how do you get your clients? It's like people skills. I meet people all the time, and that's honestly kind of what helped me. Every hour I have new people I have to work with privately, and I think that's a big part of being a photographer too. Making them feel comfortable. So.
It's like before I dove into the photography world, it's like I didn't realize how much photography depended on like people.
Yeah, it really is. I think at first like you're just starting, right? It's your first few sessions, and you're like, it's like so like, wait, my job's to pose them? Like it's like awkward at first.
Or it's like if I want to go do like event photography, there's no events anymore. Like it's like everything's kind of shut down. So it's like every like so many opportunities just like vanished. So it's now it's a lot about like one-on-one and like actual like interaction, personal skills.
Yes, for sure.
So you were with boxing. So like when in your head you were like, I want to go from being a boxing gym manager to photographer.
Well, because of my background in the arts. it's just like a progression, I feel like. I also, I grew up as a drummer in bands too, so it's kind of like I've always been around, cameras, lights, action. Even when I was like 7, I went to my first rock concert. It was Aerosmith at 7 years old, and I'm like, the lights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've always been attracted to it. Then having different photographers around the gym, I'm like, how are they making like the shot? It looks like it's night when it's really day, and like, you know what I mean? You start figuring out different techniques, and then I borrowed a camera, and I was like, wait, like there's way more control than I ever thought.
So speaking of Aerosmith and the lights, you're now actually transitioning into a little bit more of the music photography scene. Mm-hmm. So you're going on tour with the band that we can't name at the moment, but they're a big platinum selling band.
Yeah.
But what draws you towards like the music photography field?
Just because I was, growing up as a musician, I wanted to be that rock star. I actually, in high school, I was like, I am not going to college. I'm going to be a rock star. And if I'm not going to be a rock star, I'm going to do something just as cool. Yeah. And so the boxing actually was pretty much just as cool. And I think the photography is also. And they're so related. So, yeah. Yeah.
So, like, speaking of, like, the kind of spaces, like, when you go on tour, you're going to get, like, the backstage access, like being the band's photographer, from what I've experienced, is most photographers at the event, they get like 3 songs, but like I feel like the position you'll be in, you'll get to be out there for almost like the better songs towards the end of the act, when they're a little bit more.
It would be the real thing. I don't even think I don't even fully know everything about, like, it was the contract that this would be. I'm more like helping out, but still it's like, I don't think they're even touring right now, so I think they're actually recording, which is even more personal. Like, that's the thing that I think is cool. So
you had the big boxing gym space, now you've got a smaller space. So what have you, like, experienced using a big space for your studio and a small space for your studio? Do you have a preference of one or the other? Like, how has that been working for you?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So everyone's like, why are you buying all these lights, guy? Like, you don't need 1,000. And I'm like... And now I see where they're coming from. They had small spaces. I have a small space now, and I'm like, I don't need as much power. Yeah. When you have a huge space, you need so many. Like, it makes a difference. Having a big space, you can really control each element. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, I feel like. There's a subject, like let's say it's a model. Good. You're lighting the model. You're lighting the front, and then you're lighting from behind. And then you're lighting the background. And you're lighting, like, you just have so much control to do a perfect, studio image. But with it comes challenge. You want more power. You want more, more. It's like you have the space to do your dream shots. Right. Then I went from, like, massive spots now to tiny. And I'm like... But I did a shoot, my first one out of here, a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, looks the same way it looked when I had all this space. So I was freaking out, though. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do what I did, and now I am, So.
What kind of shoot was it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was just like portrait, just like hanging out, it was like on a stool type shot, but I could still set up a backdrop. I could still... My biggest thing is I do a lot of backlighting, like I was saying before, and my softboxes are huge, so I might get, like, smaller strips just for the situation, because I don't think the difference is going to matter as much, and I think that's a big part of, like, equipment, too, and being a photographer is, like, learning, like, what's practical to actually, like, bring out and what's not. Like, can we get away with something half the size, and will it matter or not? You know what I mean? So...
Because I'm assuming you had all these big giant lights moving to a small space, so like, where do I put all of these kind of situation?
Yeah. Like, how do I fit it in the shot? Yeah. You know what I mean? Before, it's like... Even then, even with a lot of space, I'd be like, I want more space.
Yeah. So, with all these lights, like, how much research did you do before buying, like, a light?
A lot. But I didn't start off rich, and I'm not rich. Yeah. And I'm still not rich, but I did one at a time. Not this weekend, but no, but I started off one at a time, and that's it. I started with the speed light, and then luckily, I found a cool, modifier, a softbox with a grid, and honestly, like, I look back to old shots I did with just that, and I'm like, shots were fine, you know.
Right.
Like you can start off with the speed light, and then but yeah, then I got into monolights, and I'm like, well, I want to like. The way I really get into everything is I look up, like, what are the famous people using? Like, how are they doing the shots, period? Right. You know, like, they're on a beach, they still have, you know, monolight, you know, their strobes and stuff. So I'm like, I need to get a strobe. And I'm like, well, it needs to be battery powered. I'm like, what's the cheapest one? Because that's all I can afford, you know what I mean?
And then also, like, what you don't see in the shot is, like, that one guy holding up, like, a giant, like, 6x6, like, reflector.
Scrim,
like,
yeah. And that's, like, the next thing I'm going to be buying is, like, huge scrims, and they call them, like, butterflies that go, like, to modify the sun. I think we were starting to talk about that a little bit outside, like, what's the challenge, and, like, if the sun's just too harsh, you know? So now I literally want to buy, like, 20-foot scrims, but, like, how do I do that on my own? I can't. So, like, now it kind of screws up, like, the clients in a way. Like, I can't, it's not gonna, like, if a model wants me for cheap, it's not
gonna work in that situation.
It already doesn't, honestly. Like, it's not.
But, like, just, like, kind of speaking on the sun, like, do you have any tips to, like, talk about the sun? Because there's a few that I, like, give out as, like, small pointers. So someone who's, like, trying to, like, pick up a camera and, like, understand what the sun actually is. So do you have any that you'd want to give out?
Again, it's, like, every photographer in the world is, like, again, you want backlight. So usually you're using a sun for backlight, usually, I feel like. And then you want to fill it, you know, with strobes. Sometimes it's, I don't know.
Well, I'm saying, like, let's say, like, all you've got, like, is just your phone and you're outside. Like, let's imagine a group of friends. You want to set up a photo, take a picture. Then you look at the photo and you're like, why are there shadows everywhere? Like, a lot of times, like, what I tell people is, you got to look at where the sun is. You got to make sure the sun's behind you. So if you do backlighting, you're all lit evenly. Yeah. Or you kind of gotta make sure the light's hitting you. Everyone's gonna be blind for a little bit, but you won't get these harsh shadows.
And there's one trick you can, like, have, like, if the sun's too, like, strong, you can have them close their eyes, and then 1, 2, 3, open, boom. Yeah. That's a cool little trick on that. But I don't know. I'm more try to just modify, like, soften it. You know, you could get, like, a cheap 7-foot umbrella even, and that would even kind of do the trick too.
So, quick question: do you prefer one or the other, backlighting or front lighting? Let's say you had, for the rest of your photography career, you can only choose one.
I backlight everything. I do both. I think it's like backlighting's what gives the magic, but I couldn't, like, be like, here's your shoot and only backlight. So I probably have to say front, but that's not what gives the magic. Right. It wouldn't be a Jared shot.
Exactly. You know? So with all these equipment that you have, all the different kind of things we've talked about, have you thought about starting some sort of YouTube channel talking about your equipment?
Definitely. Okay. Because I'm like, right now half the stuff I want to buy, it's like pre-order. Yeah. And I'm like, why haven't you been, like, why weren't you invented already? Like, like, this is weird, you know? But then I talked to engineers, and they're like, well, only a few years ago we could make, you know, an LED even turn blue, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. And we're all just like, yeah, but we want it now, you know? Exactly. Yeah, so what I do is, like, I might have a $650 tiny light, and then a $650 light this big. You're like, what's the differences? And, like, until you own them, you don't know. Yeah. So I'm the one kind of getting that kind of stuff. So I want to, you know, show people, you know. Hopefully I can help people save money. Exactly. YouTube's helped me a ton, man. Yeah, I learned so much from YouTube. I wouldn't be where I'm at without YouTube, and now I want to, like, kind of give back in a way. Exactly. Like, I don't know. I'm not expecting to even make money out. I just want to, like,
help. Yeah. Just, like, it's also, like, YouTube's a great way to also, like, kind of get yourself out there to, like, a different kind of, like, group, because, like, you think about all the local advertising that you do, but, like, anyone in the world can find your YouTube video, and then they know who you are.
Yeah, and I think a big part of the problem with a lot of small business owners and photographers is they think way too small. They're like they're going after everything in their area, which makes sense, but if you can get your production level to a high point, like, and you're on YouTube, you could fly anywhere in the world, you know, and do this anywhere.
And it's also, like, it's another thing that Google's going to pull up if someone's trying to search for photography too.
Yeah, and with all of, like, the production too, it's, this allows you to get big projects with big budgets too. You know, like the whole point is to like, for me even like the dream would be, you know, like to shoot for Nike, to shoot for like big corporations that have the money anyway. So it's kind of like, it's like they're gonna have the budgets to fly you. Like you don't need to worry about. So just I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense.
It's all right.
Yeah.
So. It's awesome talking to you, Jared.
Yeah, man.
I honestly haven't figured out how to end it, so we're going to pound it.
Yeah, man.